of about 40 organizational partners, which includes block clubs, churches, schools, nonprofits, businesses, social services, and we cover a good portion of the southeast region. We cover from Hyde Park all the way to city limits, then as far west as Chatham. So those would be the 6 zip codes that are the closest to the development. And the development that we're working on is called Southworks. That's the name that the community has decided to go with, so no matter who the developer ends up being, it will always be the Southworks site. But some of you may also know it as Lakeside Development. Some of you have heard it called the USX site. The community has chosen Southworks because that was the original name of the steelworkers site. It is located between 79th Street and 91st Street. It is the last undeveloped lakefront property in the city of Chicago. It is huge. It covers an area that's more than twice the size of the Loop. And it will be one of the largest, if not the largest, development in the whole Midwest, not even just Chicago. We expect it to create an estimated 100,000 jobs. So I know everyone's heard about the Obama Library, and I'm going to let my co-panelists speak about that. And they know that's gotten a lot of publicity, and everyone knows the extent that that would cover. Southworks site is also going to be huge and will affect the whole southeast region. We want a CBA because we want to ensure that the development benefits the people who have worked in the community, have built the community, and currently live in the community. The southeast side built Chicago, and I mean that quite literally. We have a number of steel companies that are all closed, but the steel for the skyscrapers downtown came from the southeast side. We want benefits, and we're tired of being displaced. We have really high unemployment rates. They've actually gone up 22% as of 2 days ago. We need jobs, and we're tired of seeing people who are not from our area working in jobs, especially when we have really high unemployment rates. If the developer is going to use our land and our tax money for the development, then we want to see benefits. And we want to see a tax, not only a tax return on our investments with our Hyde Park property taxes, because the township covers a good portion of the southeast side, but also the sweat equity that our folks have put in. We want a CBA that provides jobs, training, and educational opportunities, real affordable housing, not the current definition of affordable housing, but affordable housing that our folks can actually live in the development. We want environmental sustainability and a transportation plan that limits displacement. We want tax relief for long-time residents. Most of the families have been there 2, if not 3 generations, and the average number of years that a person has lived on the southeast side is nearly 30 years. We are also working on a jobs pipeline. Our jobs committee created a vision for moving people from where they're at to living wage jobs with benefits. Our goal is to connect local workers to training and current jobs, especially in manufacturing, and future Southworks jobs. Our target population is folks from the southeast side, including people of color, returning citizens, youth, veterans, senior citizens, immigrant workers, homeless, as well as displaced, unemployed, or underemployed people. So to summarize, we want environmentally sustainable development with living wage or prevailing wage jobs resulting in careers. We want a substantial number of jobs, especially with the size of the Southworks development, and community input and transparency. We believe that an agreement should be brought to the table for any new development.
Thank you, Amaya. Great. Actually, Jawanza, do you want to introduce yourself and tell us about the campaign?
Sure. Hi, everybody.
Hi.
My name is Jawanza Malone. I'm the executive director with the Kenwood Oakland Community Organization, and we want everything Amaya just says she wants. I'm part of the Obama CBA coalition, so obviously we're advocating for a community benefits agreement associated with the Obama Presidential Center that's coming to Jackson Park, located on the south side of Chicago. I think it's important that when we think about this CBA and the development project that is attached to, that we really take a step back and place things in context, right? So it's easy for us to get blinded by the fact that this is a development that's associated with the first black president of the United States. And that can become a bit of a barrier for some of us, right? Like, why are we asking the first black president of the United States to do something that we frankly don't ask a bunch of other people to do? Or do we not trust that the first black president of the United States is going to do right by the people of Chicago, and particularly the black families on the south side of Chicago where they came to prominence, right? So while people can say that, and while people can think that, it, in my humble opinion, indicates a real lack of understanding of what is happening related to this particular development, but then also what's happening in the city of Chicago and frankly across the country right now. Marco's provided some context, right? That we are in a moment where capital is controlling local politics in a way that we haven't seen for a really, really long time. In fact, when we think about the way that capital has helped to shape communities across this country, we saw a different type of capital being invested where the idea was the rich and the wealthy had to make some allowances for low-income working families, because otherwise, where is their workforce going to come from? We see a complete disregard for where the workforce is going to come from, and part of it is this sort of mechanization that's happening of labor. But broader than that, there's just a general disdain for low-income and working families. And so when we talk about the community benefits agreement, we're talking about a development that was conceived by the University of Chicago. So, of course, you have presidential libraries that have happened for long periods of time across this country, right? The Obama Presidential Library, as it was originally conceived, would have been in line with that, but what we saw was a change, a significant shift, where the Obama Presidential Library is no longer a presidential library, but it's a presidential center where a host of things are going to happen that we haven't seen in other libraries, which is fine. They aren't going to have the official documents that you have in typical presidential libraries, which is also fine. The difference is that they are painting this as a nonprofit development that's going to have broad economic impact just by the nature of it existing on the south side of Chicago, and that is a problem. When we look at every large-scale development that's happened in this country, it has resulted in the displacement of people, particularly low-income and working families, unless there's protections in place. And so for us, this community benefit agreement is one of those key protections that has to be in place to prevent the displacement of people. Because the displacement of people has been happening since the announcement the Presidential Center was going on the south side of Chicago. Ground hasn't even been broken yet, and families are being displaced from the south side. Rents are going up, property taxes are going up, and unfortunately what that means is black people are forced to find someplace else to live. And when we bring this to the attention of the people responsible for this development, what we initially heard was, well, we don't think that that's going to happen. Well, we don't think that that is happening. But the reality is, it has been happening and is going to accelerate because we've seen the acceleration unless we're able to get the things done that we need to do. And so we have not just the Obama Foundation that's involved with this development, but as I said, the University of Chicago, they wrote the bid to get the Presidential Center in Chicago. And I don't need to talk about the history of the University of Chicago when it comes to black people on the south side, right? And the city of Chicago, out of Mayor Emanuel's mouth, said he was willing to move heaven and earth to make sure that this happens. And that's exactly what he's doing. Our taxpayer dollars are going to subsidize this development that they said would be completely privately funded. So there's a whole host of untruths or half-truths that have played out over the past couple of years where this development has been in process. And for us, it just reinforces the fact that there needs to be a legally binding agreement that's negotiated with the community to make sure that the target doesn't keep moving and they get everything they want and we don't get anything that we want.
Thank you, Jawanza. Noah, you want?
Hi, everybody. I'm Noah Moskowitz. I'm a housing organizer with One Northside. So One Northside is we're an organization of individuals and institutions. On the institutional side, it's about 100 churches, social service agencies, and some subsidized buildings all over the north side of Chicago. The work that I do is a combination of tenant organizing to stop evictions from rent increases or lease terminations, kind of the same thing. And also policy organizing, which I'll get to in a second. So in the housing context, there's actually kind of like a really, you almost feel it, like a connection between tenant organizing against eviction or for affordable housing preservation and CBAs. Because in both contexts, so let's say a developer buys a building where tenants do have leases or their leases are coming up, and he chooses to not renew those leases, forcing all the tenants to leave in 30 days, which is what happens. Maybe some people here have experienced that. We fight back, demanding housing. So in both cases, it's a developer coming into a place, doing things that they want to do. So it's a rich developer coming into a place to make more money, doing the things that they want to do, taking stuff away from us, in this case housing, and then we say, well, we want stuff back to make our communities whole again. So on the north side, we don't really have like a big individual development like the Obama Library or the US Steel Southwark site. We have sort of like a mushrooming thing where we have like 30 or 40 individual luxury developments, sort of like Pilsen was nodding. Pilsen, it's real bad. And basically what I mean by that, just so people can get a picture, is like you probably see these buildings downtown where there's like, you see a scaffolding, and it's a bunch of glass paneled units, maybe it's like 200 or 300, where the rents go for like something like $1,500 to $1,800 for a studio. It could be up to $3,500 a month for a 2-bedroom. So we have like 30 or 40 of these things on the north side, maybe it's more at this point, that are either that have already been built, are in the planning process, or are under construction. We were trying to fight individual developers, sometimes just on the basis of like weaknesses they had through their investors, or through fines they owed, or through the control through zoning that aldermen have through aldermanic prerogative. But they were moving, like capital was moving too quickly for us. Like organizing is a blunt force, it's a slow process. And all developers need to do is go to some super rich investor, take $10, $15 million and then get cracking. You know, donate $2,000 or $3,000 of it to the alderman and they can get cracking. So we couldn't keep up. And even if we had one, so one of the campaigns we were fighting was like, it was a 194 unit building at a big intersection in Uptown, and our demands were like 60 affordable units and for all the jobs to be local living wage jobs, maintenance, security, construction, and retail. And we were fighting this campaign, and it was just like every other month we would hear about, oh, new development in Rogers Park, oh, new development in Lakeview, oh, new development in Lakeview. So it just became painfully obvious that even if we won this campaign, we would still be losing. And so now we're working with the Chicago, so we came up with, we started writing an ordinance, and we found out that a coalition we're actually a part of, that Coco was also a part of, Chicago Housing Authority, Chicago Housing Initiative, big difference there, was to amend the Affordable Requirements Ordinance, which I'll get into maybe a little bit later. But basically, what Alex was saying, to have a law that would require all new developments to comply with the demands that we have, which in this case is for a third of the units in all new luxury buildings to be affordable. I can get into that a little bit more later. And then on the job side of it, we're also talking to some of the other organizations that are up here to try and have a citywide solution to the jobs crisis. Because a housing crisis is a jobs crisis too if the wages aren't high enough to afford rent. I just want to say one more thing about this and then I'll be done. Like, make no mistake that the private market is a myth, especially in the area of real estate. Like, even if they're not getting specific tax breaks or specific tax subsidies, there are a ton of ways that, like, we already know about that we as taxpayers through the government give benefits to developers. They're called zoning changes, they're called condo conversion permits, they're called construction or renovation permits, and in a lot of cases they're the decision of governments not to prosecute building code violations or other kinds of fines, which is super common. And Marcos is very nice, but I am not an expert. So like there are probably lots of other ways that we as taxpayers are subsidizing development, even if it's not explicitly through tax breaks or tax subsidies, that these people are taking from us that they owe us stuff back for. And what they owe us is not displacement, they owe us, like, you know, housing and jobs and all the stuff that we're talking about.
All right, thanks, Noah. Now we can, we're all gonna fly out to Seattle and hear from Howard. Howard, can you hear us?
I can hear you.
All right.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Can you take 5 minutes to tell us a little bit about you and provide...
I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
A little bit of delay.
Yeah, it's like a 30-second delay. It's very strange.
All right, give us 1 quick second.